Hello, I am Chad Anderson of Filmmaker U, filling in for Gordon Burkell. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify their skill set. You can learn more on filmmakeru.com or follow us on Instagram at filmmaker_u. Every week, we interview a film professional, and this week we are pleased to be joined by cinematographer Pierre Gill, whose work includes Transplant, Shut-Eye, The Borgias, as well as second camera on Blade Runner and assisting work on Dune, and the Disney series Percy Jackson, which my children are very excited to watch with me. Welcome to the show, Pierre Gill. I first want to ask you about how you really got started involved in cinematography, how you chose that direction of all the different aspects of filmmaking to go into. What really drew your eye, I guess, to cinematography?
Well, listen, I started by default. I didn't know I had any skills into this until I was in a classroom in college. And we had this filmmaking class, the cinema class, watching movies, Bergman and crazy old black and white movies. And one day the teacher just said, well, now we're going to do a little Super 8 movie. It was Super 8, yes, the gray hair. And we did a chase on Super 8 film, and my chase was extremely complex. And I get back to school, and I showed my movie in the class, and everybody just like jaw drop, going like, "What the hell was that?" And I had something I didn't know. I had some skills in filmmaking, so I really had a lot of it in me, and then I learned it after with friends at school by practicing. And I started quite young. So at 24, I came out of university with a bunch of friends. I started a production company and I did music videos and very soon commercials. And then somebody spotted me and asked me to do a feature film. So at 27, I think I did my first feature film. And then I never stopped and got into more and more projects. So it's a bit of my history.
I've been a camera person for 30 years and I fell in love with cinema. I heard there was free film school in France and I wanted to get into the French film school. I really didn't know anything at the time, but I knew at least how to take pictures. So I said, I'll try for the image department. And then when I miraculously got into the French film school, I fell in love with working with the camera. You're following what's going to be in the movie. So that immediacy that the camera allows is what I loved from the beginning. I'm Kirsten Johnson, and this is my course about documentary cinematography.
It's always interesting. I teach at a college right now, and one of the things that's surprising always is it's often I find it's difficult to tell. There's certain students who just are magically drawn to, they just have the eye, they just have the eye for the work, and sometimes they're really quiet in class and they don't speak up much, but all of a sudden they shoot something. I'm like, oh, this is amazing. Where have you been? And it's just something that someone can see, kind of maybe left hemisphere or something like that, but they have that visual sense.
Yeah. And I think seriously, you have to have it when you want to work in any art form. You have to have some of it inside you because there's so much you can teach. Because 2 + 2 is 4, but in creation, 2 + 2 is 5. It's 6.5. It's 2 1/3. It has nothing to do with something real like that. So you need to have some skill inside you. You have to be born with part of it. In my class, what happened is that the teacher, she came after the film, she came to tell me, he said, okay, Pierre, right now, this is all you're going to do. You won't think anymore. You're going to be a filmmaker. You are going to work in film. Done. And I was like, oh yeah, I don't know, but I really liked it. It was really fun. And this is and then all the students, they asked me to work on their movies. So this is how I became a filmmaker, because actually I started to work on everybody's film. And I became a DP by default because I was directing my own project. I was editing. Everybody wants to be a director, so that's the core. But then I knew how to shoot. I had an eye for the dimension, for the light, for the camera, for this. So I started to shoot with everybody's movie. And at the end, when I got to university, I was the DP on every film. but I was still doing director, and I did direct also some movie of the week, and I did editing, and I won awards for directing and editor. But I became a DP by default, and I love DP. It's a great job.
Now, I do want to talk about Percy Jackson. I've been watching the series. I've watched the first couple episodes. It is a massively visually effects intensive production. There's so much going on in visual effects. As a DP, as a cinematographer, how do you incorporate or consider the amount of visual effects? What goes into that? It must be a serious undertaking to consider that there's monsters and, you know, creatures and super, you know, gods who are not in the scene, and visual effects that are just not there, but you have to shoot them as though they are there. What is that like?
Well, listen, so as you work on set, you know the size, and then you have either people with, actually we had like some stunt guys on how do you call these?
Stilts?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So for example, for the Minotaur, we had stunt guys on stilts. So they are actually at that point 7 feet, and then he's wearing a big head with horns. So we have a person that is actually running around with Percy. And then in post, they're going to erase this guy and put the Minotaur. But to be honest with you, Percy Jackson feels like a very heavy effects show. But somehow it was not that much because we shot on a volume. And to shoot on a volume, which is these big stage with LED lights, LED screens. So it's like working in a gigantic television set. It's 100 feet by 30 feet high, and it's all, and then you create the image that goes into this prior to. And it's very interesting because when you do this, you don't feel like you're doing a VFX show because you are actually shooting the sequence. Half of the Minotaur has been shot on a volume. A lot of it was successful. It's very difficult, it's very challenging to shoot on the volume. So some of it you cannot achieve. It's too much preparation. But a lot of it was shot on a volume, meaning it's actually, you see the background. So it's pretty fun. Some of it was shot on a blue screen, some of it was shot on location. And it's the big challenge for this is to be able to figure out how you're going to merge all these different ways of shooting. This is quite the tricky part.
Speaking of which, I noticed that a lot of this, it's surprising that a lot of this, I guess not surprising, but it's interesting that a lot of this is shot outside, or a lot of this shot is seemingly outside. There's a lot of fields. My kids want to go to whatever this camp is where the special demigods go to. They want me to take them there. But is there challenges to shooting outside for you? Is it a different element because you have less control on location?
Very, very big challenge. It's very difficult because the first thing is because you want, first of all, people have to understand one thing. You have as a creator, okay, as a director, as a DP, as a production designer, as a costume designer, you have a vision, but this vision, it's your dream. But to achieve this dream, it never really happened. You have to make compromises, and you have to find the good compromises. And one of them is knowing you shoot outside. I mean, we had a good budget, but not enough budget to say, hey, it's gonna rain tomorrow, we don't shoot, So yes, sometimes, but most of the time, no. So the problem of shooting outside, God is deciding about the weather. So you want sun. Is the sun gonna be there? Yes, okay, you can see it. But then you have to make your schedule in terms of where is the sun in the forest. The forest was very thick. So Camp Half-Blood was very difficult for that because it was very packed of trees. So it was difficult to even get some sun rays. And when we shot in the outside, because when you see Camp Half-Blood at the beginning, all the kids are in a big field. Well, this is an open field. And for me, it was not a good situation because the sun is in my back, and that's what you don't want to happen. So yeah, there's a big challenge is to try to figure out with the director and the ADs and the production, can we do a good schedule? Can we be there early enough so the sun is peaking at the horizon when we shoot this beautiful sequence? So this is one thing. Then the second thing is that half of the camp is in the south of, we were in BC, so it's the south of Vancouver. And the other half is in the north, next to Whistler. So it's like basically 3 hours away. So you don't shoot at the same time, not the same day, not the same weather. And then half of it is inside on stages, and the other half is on a volume. So it's quite a puzzle. And I'm happy because it doesn't show too much. I think the continuity of my work is there. And to be honest with you, when I say that your dream, you cannot achieve always your dream, part of it is like I made some decision on the day to decide to shoot that way because I knew I had to merge these locations. So if I go too far in one direction, I won't be able to continue the other part of the camp, which is actually shot 3 months later in November when it's going to be cloudy and no sun and no leaves. And there's a lot of like very complex equation to make, but it's part of
Yeah.
the job.
I mean, that is a part of the job of the artist, of the creator, of the visionary, is to adapt to problems. There will be problems, and your art form is only as good as your ability to kind of work around problems or to consider problems and then revise based on what the circumstance requires. It's absolutely true. To talk a little bit more about tech, you started in Super 8, you mentioned, which was I remember working in Super 8 and doing film conversions for editing and those kind of things. I'm assuming that a lot of the work you're doing now is in the digital realm. How have you felt about the transition from shooting on celluloid film to going into digital? How has that been for you, and has it been an improvement, or has it been a new set of challenges?
So I work on film a lot in my life. So I did like Super 8, then 16, then 35. And then I shot all my feature film on 35. I'm based in Montreal. I was one of the last one to shoot on film here, to be honest with you. And then I did the transition on a commercial because I saw the Alexa. So before the Irie Alexa, there was nothing. For me, the red was not really a tool that I really appreciate for many different reasons. But the Alexa had a quality that was more interesting. And it's very strange because the Alexa, when I saw it the first time, I was like, it's so sharp, Because from film to digital, the first thing is like, it's too sharp. And I mean, now you take a Venice, then Venice came up compared to an Alexa. A Venice is sharp and an Alexa is not. So it's crazy. Right. And now Ari did the Alexa 35 and it's super sharp. So it's very strange because you have to get used to it, and the world is getting used to it, and the kids are also seeing the world differently than we used to see it. So the first thing about the movie, the film, and the digital, I found a way to embrace it, and I found a super cool way to embrace it, and I really, really like digital because what I've done is I met some guys in a DIT in Budapest when I was shooting the Borgia, and that's like 12 years ago at least. And he said, Pierre, the way I work, he saw that I was very, very precise and very hands-on, and I was shooting with an Alexa, and I was always in post with the colorist, and I was making pictures, and I was color correcting the pictures and printing them and sending them to the lab, the post-production for them to follow. And he said, there's something you should try. So it's a little knob thing with a software called LiveGrade from Pumford. And I tried that and I fell in love completely. So I worked like this since at least 12 years. I do my own color correction on set, the basic of it, but in very precise. So from there, digital became really fun because then I had a camera that as a LUT, now I build my LUTs, of course, but even at the beginning, I started with the LUTs of the camera and I was applying in CDL on top of the LUT. So it's like, everybody makes an omelet. This is the recipe. What are my spices? And this is what I apply. And I work like this every day. And I work like this every shot and every camera. So I have 2 cameras. I do the CDL. So I color calibrate every shot of the whole series, of the whole film. I just finished on Dune doing this. Every day, every shot, it goes to the post, it comes back, it's what I had. I can apply my cyan if I want the cyan, I can apply the contrast I need, I can apply this. And then I love it because I know what I'm doing and I go home and I just have a glass of wine.
Hmm.
So when I was working on film, after shooting a day after a big shooting day, and especially shooting nights, you go home, you're very stressed because you don't know, did I expose my negative probably? Is it gonna come out grainy? Is it like gonna be like this and like that? And you're waiting anxiously for the next day to receive dailies. So it's a lot of like work that digital provide, which is very fun. Now, of course, film is gorgeous, and I still love it a lot. But I think there's choices to make to shoot on film. So if I would go shoot in Ireland outside with the greenery and the vast, yes, the film will give me more. It's gonna meet this beauty. If I shoot at night, no, I prefer digital, you know? So there's like, it's kind of fun because you can join the two worlds now.
Yeah. I was just talking to a group of students this morning about the ideas of working with LUTs and the idea that it, you know, as a cinematographer, you kind of want to see not this, you know, drab, you know, raw video of, you know, this, you know, large dynamic range kind of blur. You want to see what it's going to look like. And if you're a director, you know, if you're making a Western or you want it to look, you know, somewhat toned to be, you know, a little sepia, a little rich in the darks in there. And you want to have that because that's part of, you know, the creation of the artistic creation of that. Back to Percy Jackson. I noticed that in the first couple episodes, that there's a lot of fire. It's interesting. There's a lot of fire in a lot of different scenes. You know, part of the fantasy suggests this idea of, you know, there's a candle burning, or there's a fireplace in the background, or there's something there. What is the conditions of working with open flame in a shoot, in a scene?
Well, actually, first of all, I like candles, flashlight, fire, light source. I like to break the lens. I love to have a light source in my frame. I love to make sure it blooms. I love to make sure it breaks the lens. And I've done it on purpose. It's not fire, but it's the car lights when the Minotaur, they crash the car and then they get into a ditch. And the car lights are blooming the scene.
Mm-hmm.
And I made it on purpose. It was my concept to make sure that the car was aimed towards the lens. So I shoot in a volume and I'm going to pollute the volume. I'm going to break it. So half of the shot are working because of this. Without these, half of the volume would have been very tricky and I would have had to clean it and post. So these are things that you think about and you embrace. First of all, I love like these blooming things, but it was also something very specific for me to make it look cool and have them in silhouette. So there was a lot of artistic reason, but one of them also was a practical reason to say, I'm going to break the volume. It's going to be great. And I did. And some of it very successful. I'm very happy with it. The fires, for example, there are all the scene when she meets, when mom is with Percy and she tells him he's the dummy god and they're in the cottage. There's a fireplace. I wanted to use it. And I asked the director, can they sit close to it? Because it's going to be a very intimate story. She's going to tell him, and it could feel nice that it's like firelit and everything like that. And we did that. I don't know where else there's fire and candles. I don't remember. There's so much scenes. I shot so many scenes. But yes, but anyway, I love to embrace light source if we can inside the frame. I think it's very nice and it blooms the image and it makes it nicer. Yeah.
Can you tell me what it was like working as second camera on Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2049, and working with Roger Deakins in that capacity?
Yes. So I was, for Roger Deakins, I was his second unit DP. So I was doing a lot of action scenes or a lot of scenes that needs to be done are very big and too big for first unit to do. So with Roger Deakins, it was like phenomenal for me. I was very, of course, I felt like a kid, you know, I was not that young, but I felt like a young kid coming into a set and meeting him. Hey, Mr. Deakins. So it was really cool to meet him, to work with him. And he's a man that is very precise. First of all, he doesn't want any second unit. He wants to shoot everything himself, which is fine, which I understand. So I was a bit in his way, you know, in a certain way to talk about it, but he didn't have a choice. So what I tried to do for me is very important. And I've done the same on Dune, the movie Dune. I shot and reshot about a quarter of the movie for Denis Villeneuve because Greg Fraser had shot the whole movie, and then he was busy doing the Batman. And they reshot, and it's a big. I did a lot of sequence on Dune actually, quite a lot. And my goal, like Blade Runner, that's why I talk about both, is that my only goal is to try to become them and to light like them and to imagine how they want the contrast, how they would do it. And it's quite difficult because these are masters, you know. And when you achieve this is when you know you have a lot of experience. And so for Roger Deakins, I tried to listen. What are you doing? How do you shoot? But he was not telling me too much, so I observed as much as I could, and then I did it on my own. And I think he was very happy because he talked about me in the American cinematographer interview that he did. And my shot that I did are actually matching a lot. Nobody can know what I shot. It's impossible. So this is a big task. It's quite difficult, to be honest with you. When you get into a second unit, you have to be quite strong because you have to be able to copy someone. And to do that, it's hard because when you're an artist, like a real artist, he paints the way he paints. When Deakins light, there's something magic he does that nobody knows. It's in his head. And it's true. It's the way it works, you know. So yeah. So
Yeah.
that's my work with them.
Yeah, I think it's a challenge because, you know, as the principal cinematographer, the principal DP, you get this, you know, you can decide, and then, you know, 20 years later you can decide, and maybe you were wrong in the way you did something, but that was your vision at the time. If you're second unit, now you have to, you know, do everything their way, you know, exactly the same, and it's you have to mimic them almost, and it's
Oh yeah,
you
even if
you
it's
can't be
wrong.
wrong. You know,
No,
you
but
can't be wrong.
actually, you're right. Even if you go, oh, really? Is this what they're doing? You know, but with Deakins, you don't think that. But it could happen. You could see something and say, oh, I don't know. Okay. I read the script. I didn't see that, but that's your own private thing. But it's not your business. Your second unit, the goal to do is like, take it, do it, make sure it matches. So
Absolutely.
it's exactly. And also the thing is this, because I also have second unit on my shows, and sometimes it's very difficult because there's some pieces that I don't exactly know what I'm going to do because you create on the spot because no matter how much prep you have and time and pre-lights, it's never ready until you get to the shoot. And then you create the final spice on the top of the thing. So it's very difficult to explain to someone what you want to do. You can just explain the basic. Okay, it's a bit of a warm light, a bit of cold, and the contrast should be about there. But after that, there's the magic of what's the lens and how close you get to the actor and what choice of focal length. So it becomes very there's a lot of light dimension to this. So
That it's interesting. That was actually going to be my next question, was going to be about lenses, about how you choose lenses, whether they be spherical or anamorphic, or what goes into the decisions when you read something off a page and you say, you know what, I'm going to go with this, or you see storyboards and you say, you know what, I'm going to go with this. What draws your ideas to a certain lens?
yes, it's a good question. Now, the first thing, I don't have lenses. I don't own any equipment. Why? Because I changed the lens because this is the only painting tool you have. So you have the camera and the sensor, but there's not too many choice. But you have lenses, hundreds of them. So the first thing is Percy Jackson was a very emotional story. When I read it, I was like, yeah, okay, it's mostly about the kid, the mom, the quest, a relation between like the him and Grover and Annabeth. So it's a human story. So I want to shoot anamorphic. It's not an action movie in terms of action, so I don't need to have seven cameras at the same time, and then maybe spherical would be better. I want to shoot anamorphic because, first of all, there was two big reasons. First of all, I want to be close to the actor. So anamorphic gets you half the way closer than spherical. So if you put a shot like this with a 65 anamorphic, you're going to be at 3 feet, and the same field on a spherical, you're going to be at 7 feet. Meaning the camera is closer, and this, you feel it. You feel it on the screen. It's very important. So that's very important for me. The anamorphic was one reason, the proximity to actors. The second reason was extremely important, was to make sure I work in a volume and I try to make it as real as possible, as best as possible. And the anamorphic, in my world, would give me a depth of field. The fall off would be faster, meaning then the volume would integrate better, and maybe we could go away with a lot more. What's very important to understand is that the goal of Percy Jackson was to make it like real. It's not like a big sci-fi Marvel over the top. It's nice. It's called. I kept the color, but I try to keep it natural as much as I can with the glamour in it, with the elegance. But that was very important to do this. But it's like to do that, it means the volume. The volume is very, very good for sci-fi. It worked great on Mandalorian, great on Star Trek, worked great on a lot of things. As soon as you're sci-fi, the volume is great. If you want to go natural, it's more challenging. It's super cool to do that, but you need to do a lot more work, like a lot. So I succeeded pretty good, not perfectly. I learned a lot, and ILM and I, we learned a lot together also, because it was like one of the first time to try to make it so real, and it's not easy. But it was it was very, very, how do you say that? It was very comment est-ce qu'on dit ça? Rewarding, because we succeeded a few times, and it's a lot of work. It's crazy. So it's a technology that is growing, and I think it's a technology also that is it's super fun and great to work with. But anyway, sorry, I diverged from the lenses. So the lenses, it's anamorphic, and the anamorphic is for these two reasons: the proximity on an actor, make sure the volume is probably looking better and more real. And also, what I've done some very, very extensive tests with many lenses. And I decided to shoot with Cook lenses, big Cook lenses, 2 times anamorphic. They're very heavy. They're made in England by hand. It's very heavy glass. Nobody likes it because it's so heavy, it's so big. But I was like, first of all, we're okay because we're in studios and we have the crew to support that. So yes, I can carry big lenses because sometimes your choice is about practical. And I choose these Cook lenses for a reason, very specific reason, because they don't do artificial flares. Meaning, if you use Panavision anamorphic, like Alien, we call it the Alien flare. Of course, it's these blue streak, super cool. Every DP loves it. It makes you look cool. It makes it very, very special. I didn't want any of that because I didn't want people to understand that the volume is actually, the wall here is a volume. So it's about 15 feet away from you, 20 feet away from you. But when you look at it, it could be 300 feet away. So the volume has a dimension from the wall to the volume, to the rest. It could be from, 40 feet to infinity. But in reality, because I did put lights in the volume, they're only at 20 feet away from you. So I did not want the light to flare because they would tell you what is the distance. and then they would break they would break the reality of it. So in the Minotaur sequence, I have these big lights, and if you look at the sequence, you see there's a nice little flare, but we tweak these lenses. There's a guy at William F. White called Alex Theodore, a genius. I asked him to open the lens, tweak them, and we change them all so they don't flare anymore, but they bloom. So what they do actually, if you look at the sequence, you see it blooms. It just goes poof, and there's barely no flare. So the lights are right there, 10 feet away, but because I make them smaller, well, you think the car is about 50 feet away, maybe more, but it's actually right there in your face. But of course, I didn't use the real car lights. I made small lights. So I've cheated the perspective. So these lenses were critical for all these reasons. Not too much flare, but also the Cooke lenses are absolutely gorgeous because they're not sharp. They have a beautiful warmth and softness. So they're great for faces. So if you do a project that is meant to be character driven, it's about the faces. And when you look at the Percy episode I've done, I think I'm happy because you see their eyes. It's always their eyes are so present. The skin is fun. Everybody is nice. Not in a plastic way, you know, but nice enough. And these lenses are just gorgeous. And I mix them with a Sony Venice. So I use a Sony Venice 2, which is a very sharp camera. So these lenses on the Venice 2, they made a beautiful mix. It's a love story, and I'm very happy with the result about this.
Yeah, I would say I'd have to disagree with you because you said that most people don't like the Cooke lenses. I hear nothing except from a lot of cinematographers who are embracing the Cooke lenses. They're big and they're heavy, but they're beautiful lenses. You know, and they're worth
No,
it.
I don't. I didn't say people don't like it. I said a lot of people have a problem because of the weight. So a lot
Sure,
of production,
absolutely.
they won't take the Cooke 2x anamorphic because they're very heavy. So some production, it's too much. Physically, it becomes too much, and it becomes part of your decision. If you're going to shoot like a movie on top of a mountain with a small crew, it's going to become an issue. So these decisions are made that's why I say when your creative choice are also made about your experience and your wisdom. You have to make the right choice for the right thing. So on this one, because Cooke makes a lot of other lenses which are gorgeous. They do also anamorphic 1.8, which are very, very light. But these one are the big ones, and I was able to use those, and I was very happy to be able to do that because I cannot use it on every movie.
Sure, I totally understand that. Last question. Do you have a guilty pleasure, something that you enjoy for fun, that you watch TV or film that you just do that may be a little bit embarrassing that you have just to, you know, relax the mind at the end of the long day?
Okay, you know what? It's a shame, but I'm so tired of thinking to do these projects. They're so big. It takes so much brain cells. The only thing that relaxes me is to watch F1 series, the Netflix F1 series. I love it. I just see these racing cars. The series is great. It's fast. It's amazing. I love it. So this is not very it doesn't make me a great artist saying that, but at one point you need to look at something that is gonna really be simple for your mind because it's too much thinking. To build these projects, seriously, it's very demanding, and it's a lot of like little pieces of puzzle you put every second of the day for months. I spent 9 months on Percy Jackson and stuff. Now I just can finish like the series Dune, and it's the same. So the only thing I can do is watch stuff that is no brain cells. The other thing I like to watch, to be honest with you, is the Criterion channel. Which is a channel like Disney and Netflix and all that, which has old black and white movies.
Yeah, classic
and
films.
Classic films, and I love it because they're slow. But this is where you see that it's not a bad thing, because often what I love about this also is because sometimes, very often actually, there's a scene, two actors come, they talk, and there's no cuts. And now the only way we do movies is like by default, which not the only way, but it's a big default. It's like, oh, we need a wide shot, we need a close-up, but we need a medium, and we need this, and then we overcut, and you don't leave actors to live in a frame. And by the way, one of the reasons of the anamorphic on Percy Jackson, and if you watch it, we were able to have the 2:35 ratio, which is the CinemaScope ratio. And I was able to sell this to the producer, telling them, listen, we're gonna have 3 kids in one shot very often. And it's a road movie. They're gonna be together, they're gonna walk somewhere, they're gonna go somewhere. And you know what it does? It does that. You can fit 3 people in a frame like this without cutting all the time. So you can be in a medium shot, so you're not too far, and you can talk. And the best thing in a scene is when actors talk and react without a cut. And this is one of the best things, because you actually, as an audience, you start being in the movie, in the scene. Every time they cut too much, what it does is that they're telling you how to feel all the time. So I could talk for you for long on this. It's like black and white and color, but black and white has this effect. And that's why I like black and white movies also, because they have the effect of making yourself make your own decision about what's the emotion that's going on.
It's kind of immersive in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really nice.
All right. Well, thank you very much. That will be it for this week. You can check us out on filmmaker.u or follow us on Instagram at filmmaker_u. I am Chad Anderson. Thank you again so much, Pierre Gill, for joining us, and thank you so much for watching.